the Joker's approach to life, like it caused me to kind of ask a lot of questions of like, the Joker's like, he burns a pile of money, and it's like, well, what meaning does money really have? And like, just his whole approach to, essentially chaos and meaninglessness and all this stuff. And then really asking ourselves like, well, what meaning does life have? What are these deeper things that, because Batman has these strong morals, he has this code and all these things, but asking those questions of like, well, why? Dark Knight's just one of my favorite movies. I think last time we talked about Fellowship of the Ring, kind of how like it was really just kind of like shaped us as writers, filmmakers. I feel like Dark Knight's another one of those movies that I remember going to see it, midnight showing, and like just leaving the theater afterwards and like having like no words. It's just like this massive thing, and it's I think just even kind of that twist reveal at the end. If you haven't seen it by now, you've had 12 years. But just that reveal at the end of, essentially Batman taking on the blame for everything Harvey Dent's done, and that Gordon standing there with his son, and his son's like, but he didn't do anything wrong, like that's not right, and just leaving the theater with that feeling of like, no, like Batman can't do that, and like feeling like so conflicted and emotionally invested, and realizing like how much a superhero movie, which I think up to the point of Dark Knight hadn't really touched me emotionally like that, and like leaving and just I think it was like 3 a.m. when I got home, and just like sitting in bed thinking about it, and just realizing how much power that story and that movie had. And then years later reading the script and just seeing how much of that filmmaking just came directly from the script.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think also it's not really a superhero movie, like in the sense that we normally think of as superhero movies. It's more of, I don't know, it's almost more of like a gangster movie, or a like totally. almost I almost want to say like a Scorsese movie. Like that's like, it's this kind of big, kind of epic movie with superheroes in it. But it's more about these characters and like the nitty gritty and it shares a lot more with The Departed than it does with Iron Man. Exactly. Which I think sets it apart and makes it very distinct.
Yeah, no, I think because I went back and watched a lot of the movies that kind of inspired Christopher Nolan, and like one of them, The Untouchables. Mm-hmm. There's things in Dark Knight that feel like they just came straight out of The Untouchables, and just seeing. I think people talk about The Dark Knight being one of the first mixed genre superhero movies, because it's like superhero is kind of its own genre,
right?
But like you're saying, it's like it's more of a crime thriller gangster movie with a superhero skin on it. And I think Logan did the same thing, just a couple of years ago, where they took kind of that Western feel and put the superhero skin on it.
Yeah. One of the things, obviously, with Dark Knight, we have to talk about the Joker. Like I think I feel like out of anything, like that's probably what people take away the most from is the Joker, and like the Joker's story and the character of the Joker, which is obviously it's been done a lot of times. There's been a lot of good Jokers, but there was something obviously very special about Heath Ledger's Joker.
I think that they're saying just electric and magical that Heath Ledger brought to the Joker, because when I read the script for The Dark Knight, which is, have right here, it's the only, I think, physical script for a film that I own. But when I read the script, realizing just how much of the Joker came from Heath Ledger. Like some of his mannerisms, a lot of lines and things like that he throws in there, they're not on the page. They're things that either Nolan or Heath Ledger came up with on set. And I think when you get to read a shooting script for a movie, there's a lot of times that they're like so different. And I was surprised at how similar Dark Knight was, because Nolan is so good at envisioning what he wants to make that he got on the page. But at the same time, it was just interesting seeing what the differences were, things in the Joker's performance. Another really big difference is the whole fight scene at the end where He's got his like radar, sonar view. It's all described in hyper detail in the script, but there's no voiceover narration telling what's going on. They add that later with Fox telling him, hey, this is happening, and this is happening, and this is happening, and it made it much more clear what was going on. And that's something that I thought was really interesting, and probably something that they solved in the edit of realizing this is confusing to watch, and let's solve it by having someone telling Batman what's going on.
Yeah, that is an interesting difference between like the words on the page and the actual film, because there's a lot, sometimes things translate well and sometimes things don't translate well. But I think whenever you have a script that works as a script, it's like the bones are solid, and like the story is solid and the story's going to work, and then you may have to make tweaks as you go into your filming, and then editing is like a whole nother, it's like you make the film again when you edit. But I think having that foundation is super important, which The Dark Knight obviously has.
Yeah, and I think watching the movie again after reading the script gave me a new appreciation for the movie, because it's such a complicated, complex movie, and there's so many moving parts, and there's this legal thing that has this outcome, and so many different implications that I especially didn't understand when I saw it when it came out in 2008, that I still didn't necessarily get, where after reading the script, realizing some of the depth, just even like location headings, and realizing, oh, this is what this location is. Because like they walk into a building, there's bars, you're not quite sure where this is, and they're like, oh, move them to county, and it's like, what?
Yeah, it's a lot of moving parts. Yeah,
it all works as a movie that you watch, but realizing how much more depth and thought there even is after reading the script.
Yeah, I think it's also a really good insight into kind of the good versus evil argument, and then also trying to pit Batman against the worst villain that we can.
Yeah. So
it's like if Batman is pushing for law and order, he's trying to clean up Gotham, he's trying to keep Gotham safe. The Joker is the absolute polar opposite of that.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like in a lot of ways, like the Joker's approach to life, like it caused me to kind of ask a lot of questions of like, the Joker's like, he burns a pile of money, and it's like, well, what meaning does money really have? And like, and just his whole approach to, essentially chaos and meaninglessness and all this stuff. And then really asking ourselves like, well, what meaning does life have? What are these deeper things that, because Batman has these strong morals, he has this code and all these things, but asking those questions of like, well, why?
Right. Even like him not killing people, like that's like part of his code.
Yeah.
And then the Joker, like the whole movie, the Joker's trying to make him kill him.
Yeah.
He's like, do it. It's like that scene on the motorcycle, and they're in the middle of the street, and Batman's about to run him over, and then at the last minute he's like, and he can't do it. Like he can't kill the Joker.
Yeah.
So there is like this really interesting tension between the Joker being so evil, but at the same time, Batman doesn't want to cross the line, like his own line that he's made.
Yeah, just on a technical note on the script, it's funny because that was one scene where he's standing there and he's going to hit him on the motorcycle and he decides not to. That was one scene that I was always like, because he like spins and falls off, and it's like, what? And like when I read the script, it was like, and I didn't notice this when I watched it, but it was like the Joker's standing in such a way that there's cars, because he like shoots cars and the cars like crash. And the idea was that he's standing there and Batman can't turn right or left because basically he's put himself in the one path, so he has to run over the Joker or wreck. And I like never understood that, and then I read the script, I was like, oh. I was just like, why? No, I think one of the most interesting things about Dark Knight, which it probably took me a decade to realize, because people talk about, you're like, oh, the Joker's the star of Dark Knight, like he stole the show, like what was Batman even doing? And like they'll criticize Christian Bale or Batman, and they'll be like, oh, it's all about the Joker. But I don't know if it was an interview with Nolan or something, but I was reading something, and basically he's saying that Christian Bale, Batman, is not the protagonist of The Dark Knight. It's Harvey Dent. Because it's a story about two, and like the Joker talks about this in the monologue where he's hanging at the end of like, an unstoppable force and an immovable wall or something like that. And it's like you have two ideals that don't change and don't compromise, and then you have our protagonist Harvey Dent in the middle, and they're both trying to pull him to either side. It's because Bruce Wayne doesn't have a character arc, Joker doesn't have a character arc, Harvey Dent has a character arc. And it was like, it completely changed the way I looked at the movie. And because, you know, people be like, what was Nolan doing? Batman didn't have anything to do. It's like, no, because it is Harvey Dent's story, and it is all focused on Harvey Dent. Because he'll talk about, it's like Batman had his arc in the first one. He defined his ideals. He figured out who he was, and now he is this immovable force for good in The Dark Knight.
Yeah. No, that's really interesting. I think also with Harvey Dent too is like there's that whole, even like him being Two-Face, like the whole thing is like, where do you know, it's like we all have a different side that we can go to. You can go to the light side, you can go to the dark side.
Yeah.
It comes back to like the decisions and the choices that they make.
Yeah.
And I feel like one of the cool things in the movie is that the situations always push the characters into making the hard choice. It's like, do you save do you save this person or do you save this person? And it's like, yeah, where's the good answer? It's like, so I feel like in the film it's always pushing, you know, the Joker's always trying to push Harvey Dent and Batman as well to like make these horrible choices, and it's like choose.
Yeah, no, it's true. It has a very dualistic nature of it's Harvey or Rachel. It's this boat or that boat.
Right.
It's I don't know where I was going with that.
No, it's good. But yeah, I like the story also, just the so obviously the characters and Batman, to me, Batman also is him, because like his sacrifice. So like in order to become, you know, kind of what Gotham needs, he's willing to sacrifice his life basically.
Yeah.
And you know, it's kind of regardless of what the consequences are. It's like for him, it's like he's doing it for Gotham, and he really wants to save Gotham. And even these people that there's points where it's like these people are not even, some of them aren't good people, and you're just wondering like, are these people even worth saving?
Yeah.
But for him, they are. And there's a point where it's like there's people that are like need to be saved, and it's like somebody has to step up, somebody has to take the mantle. Somebody has to do the things that no one else wants to do. Yeah. And that's where Batman steps in.
Yeah, no, I think I love just the scene with the two boats, because you have, you know, a boat full of criminals,
right,
who probably most of whom are pretty bad, and then a boat full of civilians. And, you know, like, I remember sitting in the theater, because you have, you know, do you blow up? Which boat do you blow up?
Do you choose?
And, like, I remember saying to the theater, like, you gotta blow up the criminals. Like, there's no other option. And, you know, it's like, because that's like a hard choice. But, you know, kind of that whole Joker versus Batman clash, it's all about, like, are humans worth saving and fighting for? Or when it comes down to it, are they all just bad to the core? And, you know, when you have that one convict with, you know, all the tattoos and the scars, who, like, takes it, it's like, no, he's got
right.
But then he just like throws out the window. You have even, you know, it's like this convict knows, it's like, yes, we could save our lives, but it isn't worth it with other people's lives on the at stake. And just kind of showing that inherent value of human life and that inherent value of humans, and, you know, kind of that goodness in them that's like, no, when the chips are down, we have to pull together, even if it means we'll all die anyway. And yeah, just kind of like, I think that kind of honor at the heart of even these criminals of like, no, it's better that we all die together than we take someone else's life.
Yeah. Kind of the value of the human life.
Yeah.
I
think that's kind of, it's like, that's what that conflict is between Batman and the Joker, is like, is life and humanity and everything meaningless, or is there value to it? And what's really interesting about the movie is that it kind of like
doesn't completely answer it.
It kind of plays both sides, because on the one side, in essence, Gotham City chooses the value of human life and, you know, to fight for good, but Harvey doesn't. And I think the movie kind of offers both sides of like, there is value in humanity, there is goodness in humanity, but you also have evil. And in a sense, the movie is Two-Face, and the answer is Two-Face. There's both.
Like for me, also one of the things that I didn't like about The Dark Knight was the very end, where they make a point of saying, well, sometimes the truth, like a lie is better than the truth. So it's this kind of idea that, you know, we're going to lie about who Harvey Dent was at the end. Because in order to protect the people from knowing the truth, because if they know the truth, it's going to hurt their the reputation of the city and like the police department. Like everything was going to be like, he was going to become, people were going to hate him. So instead, to kind of protect that and protect the people, they decided, okay, it's better to tell a lie about who he actually was. But I think it's really interesting because in Dark Knight Rises, that they actually really take that full circle, and because they lied about Harvey Dent, the people didn't trust anymore. And it became a huge problem because of the lie that was told in The Dark Knight.
No, same here. I struggled with that for years because I was like, Batman can't do that. Batman can't take the blame, but it seems like it was the right thing to do. But it was like, it's all fabricating a lie. And like, I was like so conflicted for years because Dark Knight Rises, it was 4 years later that Dark Knight Rises came out. And when you watched, in essence, basically, it's like, you know, it would have been better if it would have been better for the people to have faith in Batman and to keep him as that symbol of hope than trade it out with someone else. Because in that same way, you have Harvey Dent and you have Batman as these two kind of symbols for hope for the city. And, you know, you already have Batman Bruce Wayne thinking he knows what's right all the time. You know, he hacks everyone's cell phones in the entire city.
Invasion of privacy.
Invades their privacy. Which is interesting because I don't know if Nolan intended this, but that was around the same time. It was like shortly after the Patriot Act, where, you know, justifying invasion of people's privacy in order to catch the bigger villain. And some reviewers have talked about how essentially Nolan was not necessarily commenting on that, but using that as kind of like inspiration in, you know, Batman's kind of doing the same thing of like, do people give up privacy to have
for
safety?
Security?
And, you know, and like Fox, Morgan Freeman is like, I'm not cool with this, but we'll do it this one time. And just even that, the ideas of compromise all throughout the script are so interesting because it's like, you know, Batman wouldn't kill Joker, but at the end of the day, he killed Harvey Dent. And he did compromise that value. And, you know, even Fox, he's like, I don't agree with this, but I'll do it. And, you know, just even showing kind of the flawedness in everyone. Even the symbol of hope. Is flawed. And Dark Knight Rises kind of shows even his decision at the end
turns out to
fabricate a lie is not the right thing to do. And that at the very end, the thing that brings Gotham together is knowing that Batman is their symbol of hope.
Which is brilliant storytelling. And I don't know, honestly, I don't know if that was thought out beforehand. Or if it was the kind of thing where it came out and then they, you know, maybe Nolan realized it. I really don't know, but I think having that arc makes it stronger because it ends so dark in the Dark Knight. You know, there is this kind of grittiness and this kind of this like, I don't know. There's like it was really interesting because it's really like hopeless at the end, but at the same time, like the very last shot of like Batman on his motorcycle driving out, like that's, and the music builds, and it's like, this is the Dark Knight. It's like, oh, and you're just like, oh my god, it's so good. It's so good. I'm so curious because, like you were saying, of like, what were they planning on doing with that lie and deception, and saying, you know, sometimes people need to be lied to, and like, you know, what were they planning to do with that? Because, you know, when they wrote it, when they filmed it, Heath Ledger was still alive, and I've like read some different things on what their plan was to do following up the Dark Knight, which then they
diverted from
Right.
with Heath Ledger's passing because they didn't want to recast and stuff. But what I had read is basically the third movie sequel to Dark Knight was going to be about Joker's trial. And like it was basically going so kind of like Dark Knight was a gangster movie in a superhero skin. I think whatever the third one was going to be more of a courtroom drama in a superhero skin with because it's like how much proof is there that Joker did any of this?
It's true, yeah.
And what are they putting him on trial for? And then you introduce Arkham Asylum, you can have that back in
right.
And a lot of it is like Batman trying to provide the police with the evidence to put Joker away, but it would have been so interesting, and I'm sure that kind of deception and lie would have played into
a big role,
what ever happened in that unknown courtroom drama movie that I would love to see.
Nolan, if you're listening, we want to see.
Can we see the script at least? There's something about the script. What was it? Oh well, maybe it'll come to me.
No. So do you have a favorite scene in Dark Knight? Is there like a scene that stands out to you the most?
I think one of the scenes that just when I think of Dark Knight, I think of that scene where Harvey Dent's in the police armored vehicle getting transported to county, wherever that is. And Joker's in the semi truck and Batman's in the tumbler, and like just there's so many moving parts, and there's like I think there's kind of the Joker theme that like saw on the violin sound when the scene starts, and then there's music at the end where Batman's like going towards Joker standing there, but there's just so complex, there's so many things that happen, and like that entire like 10-minute sequence I don't think there's really any music, maybe like a couple times, but it's just you're just so invested and you're so into everything that's happening. And what's also like that's what I think about when I think of The Dark Knight. But what's also crazy is I think that happens like halfway through the movie. And there's like a whole second half to the movie, but that's kind of the dividing line where up to that point, Joker's entire motivation has been, I'm going to kill the Batman. And at that point, when he meets Batman, he gets to like, Batman's coming at him and he then wants Batman to kill him. And he's like, the switch that you see in the Joker is, when he's going to blow up Harvey Dent, who he thinks is Batman, in the armored vehicle, and then the tumbler shows up and he's like, like this is different, and suddenly his entire interpretation of Batman changes. Just everything changes, and it no longer is about I'm going to make a ton of money and teach the mob a lesson and all this stuff, and it becomes in a sense almost like a weird relationship love story between Batman and the Joker.
No, that's a good way to put it.
But yeah, no, I think Lego Batman kind of like takes that relationship and shows it perfectly.
Which was a really good movie.
Yeah,
I like that one too.
Good movie.
Awesome.